purpose of those videos are, or the music is also to help folks test their audio. So you learn something new. Well, welcome everyone. I want to welcome you into this space to our SSP partner meeting for March. My name is Catherine Garland. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the program integrity specialist for the summer EBT program and then help support outreach and community engagement for SSP. Go ahead if you want to throw in the chat let's do some introductions, your name, pronouns if you'd like, your title, an organization you're a part of. We love learning more about who's in the room. And while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce my uh, co-pilot, co-facilitator, James Barta, Engagement Strategies Coordinator for OEP, Oregon Eligibility Partnership. We also have behind the curtain, we have Crystal Brockcamp and Mackenzie Yarnell. They're really the admin and extraordinaires that make this run as smoothly as possible. So thank you both for that. Today we have a pretty big schedule. We have a couple presenters lined up, but before we do that, just wanted to give a quick update. Typically, these first few minutes are going to be set aside for Claire, our SSP director, or someone else from the executive team to be able to give some updates, program updates. We don't have anyone in that capacity today, but just wanted to give quick overview. Legislative session, Ways and Means presentations are happening. Last Wednesday, Fair Boars, our ODHS director, gave the overall agency ODHS budget overview, followed by Claire last Thursday with the SSP budget. And then this week, Claire was busy. Monday had a deeper dive overview of the TANF program. Tuesday, deep dive of the SNAP program. And then yesterday, the refugee program. So she's been busy. But if you had a chance to listen, or if you have a chance to go back and listen, they were great presentations, acknowledging, where the highlights of each program are, where some of the challenges, especially budgetary wise, where those are. And she'll be back next month with more concrete updates, but just wanted to say thank you to each of you for your own advocacy work. I know many of you are also involved in the session in different ways and advocating for resources on behalf of families and individuals in Oregon. So thank you for that. And Claire or someone from the executive team will be back next month. Any questions on that before we continue? Awesome. Just looking at the chat. Great to see so many of you here. Thank you. Okay. Well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our first presenter. We have Sarah, is it Ambrosek?
Yeah.
From the Oregon. Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, you
First
got
try.
it. Yay. It's always so fun
From
to
the
hear how
Oregon.
my last name's going to be pronounced. I just requested to share my screen,
Oh, cool.
so I just want to make sure I get that going.
Cool. There we go. Yep.
All right, you can see it all?
There it is, and I'll pass it over to you. Go for it.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Ambrosic, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm an operations and policy analyst with Paid Leave Oregon. I work within our outreach and our customer care teams. So I kind of hybrid on both sides, if you will. I do want to give a special thanks to Bill Bainey. I don't think he's in this meeting, but he's the one that actually got me set up to speak and get on this agenda. So really appreciate him for doing that. And then thank you to Catherine, James, Crystal, and Mackenzie for setting up and facilitating this meeting today. I just love an opportunity where we have interagency collaborations as our public service missions are to serve Oregonians. So with that in mind, I'm here to talk about Paid Leave Oregon to all of you, and you might already be very familiar with it, or maybe there's some gaps that I can help fill. But before I get started, just want to let you know We are now 1.5 years into this program since we went live on September 3rd of 2023. And just some fun facts to date, we've issued over $1 billion in benefits. We've paid over 150,000 people. We've brought our average time to process a claim down from a peak of nearly 50 days to 21. Our hold times are down to 20 minutes, and we are currently at about 362 folks that are with our program. I remember when I started at the end of 2022, I think I was number like 67 or something. So it's really been so awesome to see how the program's been evolving and growing, and just that we're getting there. I'm hoping after you learn, or just to reaffirm what you may know about this program, that there's opportunity to create partnerships with you all and to connect with your communities and priority populations around the state. There are still so many folks who aren't aware of this program or that might be familiar, but it might seem a little daunting to apply. We want to put that at ease and provide the necessary support with any accommodations or accessibility that's needed. We have seen a lot of folks who are applying for paid leave Oregon. Um, they're making above the minimum wage threshold, and we're working on providing awareness and connecting to communities where targeted services are needed. Our program can be translated into 8 languages on our website, and our brochure is currently printed in 6 languages with another 4 in process. Another, just something to know about our website, we offer a quick exit button, which is a safety feature, and it's designed for folks who may be experiencing domestic violence and other types of assault. What happens is when they push that button, this redirects to a neutral, non-suspicious page if they feel they might be in danger or being monitored by an abuser. If there are any opportunities, present, table, engage in ways that are really meaningful, we would love to connect with each of you. There are currently 8 paid leave outreach folks. We all reside in all parts of this state. We have a gal that lives in Ontario, and she kind of focuses on that side of the state. We also have another gal that focuses in Southern Oregon. She technically lives in California, but she manages all of the connections and communities within Southern Oregon. So for my outreach here, please, if there's anything that you all can do to connect us with your resources, we would love that opportunity. All right. So I will kind of just briefly go over this presentation. I have sent a copy, so if you all want a copy, you can request it from one of the facilitators here. But this is just an example of our guidebooks. It gives an overview for the employee and for the employer rights of paid leave Oregon. I would recommend, like, if you do have folks that are asking about it, tell them to go to page 28 of the employee guidebook, because there's a checklist of all of the information that they're going to be needing to get the application process started. So just briefly, just a reminder, paid leave, it's a state government program. It provides up to 12 weeks of paid time off when many of life's most important moments impact families, health, and safety. You can take paid leave under 3 different categories. You've got family leave, that's to care for a family member with a serious health condition. It's also to care for and bond with a new child in the first year after birth, adoption, or foster care placement. And then just this year in January, we added pre-placement leave, and that's to complete any of those necessary activities for adoption or foster care placement. We have medical leave, that's to care for yourself during a serious health condition. And then lastly, we have safe leave, and that's for folks who have survived or experiencing sexual assault, domestic violence, harassment, bias crimes, or stalking. Now, you can qualify for benefits here if you work seasonal, full-time, part-time. The size of your employer does not impact your coverage as an employee. We do have a list on our website that paid leave does not cover, like federal government employees or tribal government employees. Those folks aren't covered. Volunteers aren't covered. If you or someone you know is a self-employed individual, you can definitely elect into the program, and we actually highly encourage those self-employed individuals to do that. Your work has to be located in Oregon. You've been contributing to paid leave through those payroll deductions. As we all know, back in 2023 in January, we all started making contributions to the program. Obviously, you need to experience a qualifying event. And then you do need to make at least $1,000 in wages in the year prior. That's going to help calculate, and the minimum of that would be about 65 bucks a week. But again, that's only if you made $1,000 last year. This is just an example of things that we don't cover, non-serious illness like a cold or something, but bereavement is still not covered, and military leave. All of our forms are located on our website. I highly encourage you to discuss with folks if they do decide to apply for Paid Leave Oregon to use the forms that we have on our website. They are more than welcome to utilize an OFLA or FEMLA form, but the quickest way to get through is if they download our form and complete that and give it to their medical provider. Again, it's up to 12 weeks of paid leave in a 1-year time frame, or we call it a benefit year. It's a rolling 52 weeks. So once you start your claim, it's the Sunday preceding starts your benefit year. You can take it in a work day. You can take it in a number of work days that fall less than a week, but you cannot take paid leave Oregon in amounts that fall less than a day. So we don't do hourly increments. You can also choose between consecutive or intermittent leave. I will say for folks out there that are interested in taking pre-placement leave, you must use an intermittent schedule for that. What that means is that you just need to be filing weekly. Let's see here. This is just a quick chart. It's an overview that shows the different leave types in Oregon. Really, paid leave is the one that pays. I believe Oregon sick leave pays as well, but I think it's only up to 40 hours a week. OFLA and FEMLA are unpaid. So when you're ready to apply, this kind of just gives you what the flow looks like. You want to make sure that you have all your documentation available. So again, download that form on our website. Make sure you give notification to your employer at least 30 days before starting leave. Obviously, if it's in unforeseen circumstances, we have rules that follow what that means. But again, if for some reason you're not able to give your employer notification within 30 days, we do have a good cause rule in place. And then you're going to want to set up your Francis Online account. The quickest way to access benefits will be through Francis Online. Everything will be monitored there between you and Paid Leave Oregon. So that's how you'll do most of your communication. For employers, they're going to want to respond to questionnaires. So what's going to happen is when an employee applies for paid leave, the employer is going to be notified twice. Once that this person has applied, and then they'll go through a series of survey questions. For example, does this person work for you? Okay. Is this person on unemployment or workers' compensation, time loss benefits? And then lastly, did this person give you 30 days notice? If for some reason they check that no, there is up to the first week penalty. It's like 25%, but it's just in your first week. This is just what you need to know when you apply. We have created a template for employers that they can fill out and give it to their employees. A lot of times what we'd heard was a delay in receiving benefits was that the employee didn't know what the BIN number or the EIN number was. They also got maybe the address incorrect because they thought the address is where they go physically to work, but maybe that headquarters is located in another state. So this is something that can help speed up that process. This template is located on our website as well. Again, the average timeline to receive benefits, it's about 29, but that was like a week ago, and now we're at 21 days. So we're getting so much quicker. This is just an example of payroll contributions. I know I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm kind of zipping through this. We're almost done. But this is just an example of what you're making those contributions. So all employees are automatically going to be contributing 1% of 60% of their wages. And then if you're a large employer, which means if you have 25 or more employees, they pay the 40%. But honestly, just we have a calculator, a benefits calculator on our website. Just go there, put in what you think your expected gross wages are, and it'll calculate out for you what that looks like, your benefit amount. Job protection, you must work for your employer for a consecutive of 90 days, okay, meaning like you got to be on the schedule for at least 90 days. And then you go out on paid leave Oregon. When you come back, your job will be protected, okay? Healthcare benefits need to be maintained by your employer while you're out on paid leave Oregon. And we've got, I mean, it's a new program. There's a lot of fraud. People are trying to game the system right now. If for some reason you feel like maybe your identity is being taken or somebody signed up on your behalf, but you really didn't, please notify us. There's a button on the Francis account that you can click both from the employer and the employee side. And that's it. I kind of cruised through it, but I hope this kind of just gave a refresher to some of the things that you may have already known or something new. I would love to be a resource again. On behalf of my team, we're really reaching to partner. We want to connect with the populations that you serve. We really just want to figure out a way that we can work together. So I don't know if we have any time for any questions, but I'm going to put my contact information in the chat so that you all can feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, Sarah. And yes, you do have time. You have till 2:30 if there are questions. Otherwise, we have a commercial break planned.
Yeah, nice.
Any questions for Sarah? I know I learned several new things through that. And it's interesting. I feel like with paid leave, you kind of hear, here and there from folks who've used it or who know about it. So it was really great to get the overview.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think one of the things too is just like I said earlier, it can be a little bit daunting, right? It's another state program. People are worried. What about my job? How does this work? Am I part of this program? And so we want to help folks. We also just launched at the beginning of this month. It's called a Navigator program. So we've got 3 WorkSource offices. There's one in Salem, Woodburn, and then there's one in Beaverton where folks can make an appointment and they can go in person and someone will sit there and walk them through the process, help them register, help them apply, answer any questions. So we just launched that this month. I'm pretty sure, I think I heard that we have already 10 people that are registered for that. But again, it's just kind of getting that information out there. So with your help all, please, we would love to connect. Like I said, we've got folks all around the state. Um, I'm the only operations and policy analyst on our team, so I kind of help support our program analysts. And so I float the state, which has been really fun these last couple of years. Those frontier areas are really, really fun too. They're out there. But I really appreciate this time that you've given. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Any last questions for Sarah before we jump into our quote unquote commercial break?
No questions, but I just wanted to reiterate the thank you, like so much for taking this opportunity to come here and share that information. Super helpful. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
awesome. Thanks, Crystal. Really appreciate you hearing that. We're just trying to serve everybody that we can. And like I said, we've been seeing folks that are making above the minimum wage threshold that are applying. And so it's kind of like that's great. But we also want to make sure that we're serving others as well. And we're just trying to tap in as to many connections as possible. And I know all of you know Greg Ivers. He's the one that told me about y'all. And he said that, oh, you got to go to the CPCs. And I'm like, a CP what? And so we started chatting and he said they're a wonderful group. They're going to be your connectors. And so here I am reaching out. Hopefully we can hold hands and help each other. But thank you so much for saying that, Crystal. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and I think turn over to James. Him and I are going to kind of tag team a couple quick items before our next presentation. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
And
you,
then we will be
everyone.
sharing out the slides. So thank you for sending those. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you. And yeah, it's so nice to be a co-host, but really not have to do a lot since Catherine is doing such an able job. It's wonderful. And so yeah, I guess we're going to take a break from what I usually talk about, the one system and such things, to remind people to make sure their clients are doing their taxes. Now, that doesn't sound like pulling teeth and things like that, but for so many people, that means a huge refund. And and the trick though is that when the research says, oh, hey, if you file your taxes, you're going to get $3,000 back or more back as a refund. That sounds great and all, but in actuality, um, the issue for so many people is the complexity of doing their taxes. And so we have a program. It's run by Meg Reinhold, doing a great job. And so just to be aware, if and I have a loud cat, I don't know if you can hear that, but in any case, if someone didn't do their taxes in the last few years, they might be missing out on a pandemic rebate. If they haven't got it done by April 15th, that's okay. If you're actually not owing taxes, but you're getting a refund, that the deadline doesn't make a big difference for you. So, in any case, there's lots of wonderful resources that are available. And I should have had the website ready to go, and I don't right now, but I'll make sure to put that in the chat in a little bit. But you can go to the website with all sorts of resources. There's like, I forget, 16 different organizations around the state that will help you do your taxes for free, that help the people you're working with do those taxes. And at the website, there's these flyers that are available. And so all sorts of resources. And I also want to plug one other little thing, that Oregon is one of only 24 states that get to use this straight from the IRS. Is if you have relatively simple taxes and not a lot of complex things, you could go to directfile.irs.gov and just direct file your taxes as well. So there's all these resources. I encourage people to work with these organizations that are out there that can help you, your clients, do their taxes for free. But it is also possible to direct file in Oregon nowadays, assuming you meet certain requirements. If you go to that website, I played on it myself, and it'll walk you through if you meet the criteria, and you can just do it. What is it? In under an hour. Some people take as little as a half hour. That's their info. But nonetheless, an important resource. So I encourage you to take a look at that. That was the commercial break away from our one system info.
Thank you, James. Wonderful. And I see that and thank you, Misha, for throwing that in the chat. I was over here feverishly looking for it and then gave up. So thank you.
Thank you. Misha's the
Awesome.
master of getting those links in.
Perfect. So, and I do see that our next presenters here, so I will go ahead and pass it over. We have Sam Khan here, who's our interim chief data officer with the director's office at ODHS, to share about community information exchange. So I'll pass it to you, Sam.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Catherine. Can y'all hear me okay? All right. Thank you so much for the invite today. Thanks to James. Thanks. I see Misha Mayers on the group today. Two people I've worked with on this community information exchange assessment that I'll be sharing about. And thank you so much, James, for running the slides. Well, it looks like we can see your email inbox.
Yeah, sorry, wrong one.
That's okay. All right. So as Catherine said, my name is Sam Khan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in the director's office at ODHS. And I had the pleasure of sponsoring an assessment for Community Information Exchange, and I'll share a little bit of the background when we get the slides up. So, well, actually, we can just jump right in. Next slide, please. I'll talk about what Community Information Exchange is. For those of you who aren't aware, I know we've got some folks on here who are familiar with it. You may hear me use the acronym CIE. So I'm talking about Community Information Exchange when I do. So today, I'll give an overview of what is CIE, what does it have to do with ODHS, what is this assessment about. I'll share some of the highlights and what we learned. I'll share what's coming next, and then there'll be some time for open discussion. Although feel free to drop questions or comments in the chat as I go. Next slide, please, James. Thank you. So what is CIE? The definition that our partners over at the Oregon Health Authority use is a network of collaborative partners using a technology platform to connect people to the services and supports they need. So one thing that's important to note is that it is a technology, but it's also built on relationships, and that relationship piece is key for CIE to be successful. It enables specific functions like closed loop referrals, which essentially is sending a referral. It's knowing what the outcome of that referral is, having that be communicated back to the person who sends the referral, closing that loop. It also includes a shared resource directory and informed consent. The core focus is on improving how information is shared and how services are connected to better meet people's needs. That's the big idea with CIE. And so what does it have to do with ODHS? Well, we have a small use already through our Office of Emergency Management. They use it for disaster case management. It's being used in different places across the state by different partners. There's a large involvement of our coordinated care organizations through OHA contracts are using it. And there's a push right now around using it for health-related social needs benefits connected to the Medicaid 1115 waiver. There's a little bit of background I'll share. There was some legislation from 2022 related to assessing CIE statewide, where the Health Information Technology Oversight Council, which is nested under the Oregon Health Policy Board, was directed to pull a work group together and then assess feasibility for CIE and make some recommendations for ODHS and OHA in adopting CIE. And those recommendations were very high level. The idea with this assessment was to bring it down several layers and to assess what's really going to work. Is this something that is there a value add for the work that we do? Is this something that would really benefit the people that we serve? So this was our opportunity to answer those and more questions. So the assessment goals were to identify current referral processes. So we know that referrals are being made. Do we have any data to understand a baseline of how those referrals are being made, to whom, for whom, what are the outcomes, what are the gaps? Are there gaps in services? Are there gaps in who's being served? With an eye toward culturally specific, culturally responsive services. Wanting to understand that current state. We wanted to look at the levels of readiness for CIE, and I'll talk more about what readiness means and how we defined it. We wanted to explore critical considerations and provide recommendations, and then outline potential plans that can adjust to the needs of ODHS divisions, staff, and community partners. And when I say we, I should probably take myself out of that. I was a sponsor and on the work group, but it was North Highland was the consultant that we brought in to actually lead the assessment. All right, next slide, please, James. This was the team. There's a lot of acronyms I realize on this slide, but this is just to say we had cross program and within ODHS involvement on the team. And we had a team of folks from North Highland. They also brought in some subject matter experts on CIE because this is new territory for them. And then I was the sponsor, as I mentioned. Next slide, please. So our approach, North Highland's approach to the assessment that we co-created together. So in terms of strategy and mindset, it was really important for us to lead with our Equity North Star. And that really meant engaging diverse perspectives, considering partners, considering staff perspectives, and not having it be one-sided. We wanted to engage in big picture thinking, and this meant looking at the broader agency and community contexts. We wanted this to be a neutral assessment, so focused on understanding, not pushing a decision to adopt CIE or choose a specific vendor. We really wanted to know, look at this in a clear-eyed way and understand whether this has value, and if so, let's dig a little deeper there. So continuous improvement was part of this. There was a lot of iteration, a lot of changes as we went. This was pretty quick 4-month assessment that moved the shape changed as we went depending on what we were learning. And then we wanted to make sure it was person-centered and data informed. So that means grounding the findings, the potential recommendations, and the experiences that we were learning about, and the data insights, not just the data or just the experiences. So the framework, you may have heard this this triad in any kind of technology implementation that looks at people, process, and technology. So not just leaning on the technology piece, but considering it more like a 3-legged stool. So in terms of people, we recognize people as the heart of ODHS and the key to any successful implementation. So this meant thinking about change management, engagement needs across various groups, HR support, training needs, those kinds of pieces. We also looked at process, or the steps that we take to reach goals. So this was looking at things like governance structures, legal frameworks, workflows, policies, procedures, and then the specific needs of programs. And then for technology, we were looking at current systems and tools. So you may not be surprised that the one system came up quite a bit, and questions of if you're going to introduce another tool, is it going to integrate or be interoperable with the one system? Those are the kinds of questions we had related to existing systems, and case management systems was another one. And then of course, security, privacy, technical user support needs were also part of that technology bucket. All right, next slide, please. So here's a little bit about the methods. So we work to identify key people based on relationships and guidance from the CIE work group that we pulled together. There were interviews in which detailed conversations with groups and individuals happened, surveys to gather broad input from internal staff and external partners. And then we were gathering feedback anytime. So we had open channels to ensure that the surveys and the interviews weren't the only ways to gather info. We checked in weekly, and we had some collaborative sessions to work out the deliverables together. And so just in the right hand there, you'll see the methods by the numbers. So North Highland conducted 47 internal interviews and had 228 survey responses internally. They conducted 16 external interviews, and then had 50 survey responses from external partners. Yeah, I think that's good for this slide. Next slide, please, James. So I wanted to give you all a sense of the community partner voices in the CIE assessment, and I'll let you look at this slide. I won't read all the organizations here, but of the partners who received the survey, this is who we heard back from. So you can see it's a range of different folks. We've got a few of the Area Agency on Aging in here. I see Council on Aging. Oh, I think there's a typo on here. I'm sorry. I'll fix this deck and then resend it. We had Oregon Food Bank. We had DD partners here. This is just to give you a sense. 211, I think 211 is here today. So thank you. And if any of you took the survey, thank you very much for taking the time. Next slide, please. And again, with this slide, this is the ODHS voices in the CIE assessment. This is just to show you that we tried to do our due diligence and make sure we were talking to a lot of different groups across the 6 major programs within the agency. And then other partners like the Office of Tribal Affairs, other interest holders within the agency, like Office of Tribal Affairs, our Office of Equity and Multicultural Services. And then it's a mix of people who are in the central office and staff who are local. All right, next slide, please. And so we identified, I think with any assessment, there's always going to be gaps. So we identified that we need to learn more from other voices to make sure that this is rounded out. And in future phases of information gathering, we'll be making sure to fill in these gaps. So that included more ODHS staff members providing direct services, more community members, and one of the shortcomings is that we didn't have outreach in Spanish, and so we missed out on hearing from Spanish-speaking communities. We in the future want to have more conversation with tribal nations, with more CBOs with a focus on culturally responsive, culturally specific providers, and then more engagement with AAAs and other agencies. So next slide, please. So I'll get, that was a lot of setup, and from here, I'm going to talk about what we learned. Next slide, please, James. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about readiness. So we use this framework to think about and to gauge where the different, the 6 major programs are in terms of readiness. So overall, the agency's in its early stages of exploring CIE, and each of the divisions or program areas, you'll hear me say division or program area, is in a different point in understanding how CIE might support the work that they're doing. And there's a lot of exploration right now of how CIE could benefit staff, partners, and individuals. So you can see kind of the top of this image here is awareness. So the majority of programs you can see clustered there on the right-hand side are in that awareness bucket, becoming familiar with CIE. There's a few programs who like veer into the exploration bucket, so actively gathering info, discussing alignment and with goals, and limited pilot efforts. The planning bucket is probably as far as we are, and that's our Office of Resilience and Emergency Management that I mentioned earlier. They're developing plans, securing resources, establishing teams and ways of working to support CIE. Although I will point out that the disaster recovery efforts are a little bit further down, and that's a subset of what OREM does. There's a very limited implementation I'll mention with a small pilot in District 8, Jackson and Josephine counties, where 3 different programs are using some of OREM's licenses to test out using CIE with people they serve. But you can see here that we're just like starting to dip our toe in just to see if it adds value. Yeah, thank you, James, for adding that. ODHS is a big place, so different parts are different stages. That's right. So I'll describe this dashboard on the next slide here. So how ready is each division for CIE, and what would they need to be successful? So being ready, I think it's important to mention, means having the right people, processes, and technology in place to successfully work in new ways. We were trying to be fairly neutral with how we determined readiness. It's not that everybody in a division or program are raising their hand and enthusiastically saying, yes, we need this new tool. Are there structures in place to support this if there were a decision to move forward. So this is based on the internal staff responses. So they indicated intermediate levels of readiness across divisions, and that this was quantified based on what came back in those 228 surveys. You can see that everybody's sort of veering to the right in terms of intermediate. And then how ready are various community partners for CIE, and what would they need to be successful? So we also saw more of an intermediate level of readiness for CIE here. So you can see the map there of Oregon that's broken out by ODHS district, and the little bubbles indicate where we got survey responses from. So when I look at this map, I can see that there's some gaps in Eastern Oregon, right? I'm grateful that we've got some responses from District 10, District 13, District 14, but I think future state, we'd like to dig in a little deeper and understand more about readiness and outside of the I-5 corridor. So I will share that community partners often reported collaborating with multiple divisions across ODHS. So though the surveys were sent out through division points of contact, what we heard back was not surprising, right? Because it is a large agency and there's a lot of overlap in service delivery. So we found higher readiness levels among partners who collaborated mostly with vocational rehab, child welfare, our Office of Resilience and Emergency Management, and then VS, that stands for Volunteer Services. That's a smaller program that we included in the assessment. We found lower readiness levels among partners who collaborated mostly with OEP, Organ Eligibility Partnership, self-sufficiency programs, Office of Developmental Disability Services, and then Aging and People with Disabilities. And then I'll note that 40 out of 50 community partners we heard from reported having culturally responsive services as part of their service portfolio. So this is just, I would say a pretty shallow view of partner readiness, and there would be a lot more to learn, but it's a starting point for us. So I want to put that caveat out there. So let's talk a little bit about the shared needs that were uncovered across ODHS divisions in this assessment. So North Highland looked at ways each division could use CIE and uncovered some of the needs that they've identified that crossed the agency, so more of an enterprise view. And so you can see that across the top, those tabs across the top are the 6 major programs plus, plus OREM, Office of Resilience and Emergency Management is also included here. And then there were 4 kind of big areas that can serve for us as like the basis for guiding principles in my mind. So community engagement and equity was very important. So we heard unanimously that we need to enable community-led ways of working. We need stronger collaboration and education on services. We need to promote equity and support culturally, linguistically, and accessibility responsive providers. I think if we look at CIE implementation and take a step back, we can see that those are the providers that we need to really focus on and not take for granted that they'd be able to participate in a new technology implementation without a lot of support and partnership. Interoperability, which I referred to earlier, was another big one. So people talking about existing case management systems or the one systems or other systems where we're tracking and inputting data and wanting to be really thoughtful about what it would mean to introduce another system into the mix without thinking about interoperability, which is no small lift, but very important for us to think about if we would want to move forward with community information exchange. So this means things like secure and compliant information sharing, closed loop referrals and outcome tracking, increased visibility and reduced silos, and then crisis response and emergency service coordination, which was one that our OREM partners was really interested in. Governance is another big one. So wanting to design governance with community, having a role there in decision making, setting shared agreements, priorities and policies, consistent data policies, security and privacy, and then transparent monitoring and compliance. It's all part of that governance bucket. And then finally, data and reporting was another important category for us. So this means like consistent data formats across partners, centralized data from multiple sources, and analytics to identify trends and gaps, which is one of the features of CIE. I didn't mention earlier, but it can help us know where there are service gaps, because right now we don't have that data readily available in the way that we refer. All right, I'm going to take a sip of water here. We can move to the next slide. Thanks, James. So I'll talk about the recommendations over the next several slides. And this is pretty high level, but based on the learnings from ODHS staff, from the community partners that we heard from, the assessment provides some recommendations for implementation, for process phases, for governance frameworks, resource and training needs, and more. So I'll talk a little bit here about implementation process. So North Highland wanted to suggest a structured incremental approach that has some key phases like discovery and planning, solution configuration, development, piloting, phase rollout, ongoing improvement cycles, organizational change management. This is a little bit ODHS centric when I describe it, but these are the things that we would need to think about internally and resource to be successful. Next slide, please. And then governance, and they were adamant that it needs to have community at the table. Community needs to be involved in decision making. that there's transparency. We're considering tribal sovereignty and local alignment. Some of the key elements of governance would be clear decision authority, data governance, continuous feedback. I realize, thank you, James. I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to move fairly quickly through the rest. Next slide, please. I want to make sure there's time for questions. Human resources and workforce support. So this is, pretty straightforward. Training, supporting planning for implementation, establishing and maintaining a governance framework, and support for the workforce in any new changes. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the training slide. So they're recommending a train the trainer approach, role-based practical scenarios that's accessible, that training content cover vision and goals for CIE, people and partnerships collaborating with CIE, and so forth. All right, next slide. Sorry to be moving quickly through these. So next steps that North Highland is recommending for us, that we're communicating out these findings, communicating out what to expect from ODHS, that we're expanding CIE awareness and engagement, including with partners, including conversations about what partners' experiences are and what they would expect from ODHS related to CIE if we did make a choice to implement. They've suggested that we discuss the information gaps and plan deeper discovery actions. I've mentioned a couple through the course of this, but that would definitely be where our attention would go as a next step. And then supporting ODHS divisions or program areas in their own recommended next steps, since we've got not everybody's in the same place on whether and how to adopt CIE. So that would be a very division-based conversation. All right, I've got one more slide. So, and I'll share part of my goal, my commitment here is sharing out these the results of the assessment, which we're finalizing the full deliverables, and we'll have those available for anybody who wants to see those. Engage in broader discussion within our agency and with partners, and then pending ODHS leadership decisions, we would conduct implementation planning, probably starting later in the spring or summer. And then exploring resources for broader implementation. And that would look like making a request to the legislature for the 27-29 biennium potentially. So if we could take a couple minutes for questions, maybe we can stop sharing so I can see people, hopefully. Any questions folks have? And I'm also happy to take questions offline or come talk to you, check in with you or your folks. I'll drop my email address in the chat here. And that was a lot of talking at you, so I apologize.
Not a question, but a comment in the open space. I used to work as an eligibility worker and then a community partnership coordinator. And every time I hear about CIE, I think of how it could revolutionize how we serve and send out those referrals. So it's exciting to hear, and I'm certainly looking forward to hearing next steps. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Yeah,
too.
thank you for saying that. That's great to hear. I think it's a time to be using our imaginations for what this could actually mean. And also to think very critically about it as well, and use an equity lens and thinking about who it might benefit or not benefit. But yeah, I think it is exciting. All right, well, get in touch if anybody has a question or wants to talk more. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah,
appreciate that. Wonderful. We have just a couple minutes left here, so I think what I'm going to do here is throw something in the chat to you all. And just wanted to make folks aware that, hold on, let me pull up my talking points. There we are. So with impending possible federal policy changes, recognizing that they may or may not have an impact on community or on partners or on agency, on everyone. ODHS has set up a website that I threw in the chat there so that that's going to be the quickest and latest update on anything as it changes. If they do have any impact to medical, food, cash, childcare benefits, that website there would be the first place to be updated. We also have a flyer with some QR codes, some additional resources too that we will include with the minutes. But wanted to share that with you all. If you have, community members who are asking, it's certainly an external website that can be shared broadly. The flyer can be shared too, but wanted to make sure that those were in your hands as partners.
Catherine, I don't see it in the chat. Did you enter?
Oh, I sent it directly to someone. Thank you, James. Hang on. Let's try that again here. Everyone. There it is. That should be to everyone. Cool. All right. And I know we're right about at time. We did have one more thing, but I think I'm looking at you, James. We could probably just include that in the minutes, you think?
Sure. Well, I'll just make a plug
Go
since
for it.
I won't be sharing anything, but we have heard, if you look on our website, benefits.oregon.gov and other places, there's a little alert that says, hey, make sure people have phone number, the phone number that people get appointments from programmed in. So I'm putting that in the chat. Just a little blurb that your clients, or if you're expecting an appointment call, the number that you get from the one system from our eligibility workers is that number. So make sure it's programmed in people's phones, because you don't want the number to be screened out because the phone thinks it's spam or something like that. So just a little plug in that, but we'll put in the minutes too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. If you have any feedback for future conversations, presenters, I believe we'll have a link within the minutes, or you can reach out to myself or James, any of us specifically, but really appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next month. Thank you all.